For anyone who knows me, I love to tell stories, and I love to hear stories about my experiences with Arabian horses. I'm with my friend Jeff Wallace and my friend Carol Steppe from Daydream Arabians. And Carol, I've been to your farm many times. Your horses are, of course, as you already know, incredible, your breeding program. I'd like for you to share with us your years, how you got involved with Arabian horses, when you got involved in Arabian horses, again, how you selected the Arabian horse as your breed of choice, and how that all happened.
Well, I think, David, that both horses and Arabian horses selected me. I kind of have always believed, as my life has gone on, that I think people, the whole world needs someone to take care of certain areas of it.
Sure.
And from the time I was very young in a suburban city with sidewalks and not a horse in sight, I loved horses. And I persistently asked my parents, and I know the story is true of so many people, why did I love horses? My parents had no connection with horses. No one in my history that I know of does. But I was possessed, and from a very young age. And I finally wore my parents down, and I got a horse at age 15. And she was a quarter Arabian, and that's all I could think about. So I was so proud, and I loved her. And I went off to college, and eventually we had to sell her because I just couldn't be involved enough. And I ended up getting married and having a family, and for many years told my husband, boy, we certainly could not have afforded it at first, but I said, if ever you would want to get me the very best present you could ever get me, please consider getting me a horse. And if it could be an Arabian horse, that would be unbelievable. But even the very best thing was if it could be an Arabian mare. And eventually the seed was planted, and I was surprised one Christmas with the gift of an Arabian mare.
Oh, wow.
It profoundly affected my life, obviously. I loved her, rode her everywhere, and eventually decided, gee, I'd like to try breeding.
And this was how many years ago?
This was in 1984.
Mm.
So.
And you still at that time had children at home?
I did. I had children in junior high, and so it was a part of my life. It didn't become my livelihood and my real profession until later.
Where did you keep
it was
her?
The building process.
Where did you keep her?
Well, I lived in Southern California in a beautiful community called Palos Verdes that has trails, and we rode out on all the trails.
So you actually had her at your home, and you could see her every day?
Not at my home, but at a nearby stable. So, and eventually I moved her to a friend's farm in San Ynez, California, where I've been ever since. And she's the one that had found this horse for me. And her name was Christine Crouch of Paragon Arabians, and she was my mentor, and we had many years of just my learning and going to horse shows such as this and becoming familiar with lines and pedigrees and kind of figuring it out. It takes a while to really develop your eye to become someone who can really contribute to the breed in a significant way, I think.
Sure.
And I really do believe that process, I can say, took me maybe, and I think it takes almost everyone, there's years that go by until all of a sudden you realize it is clicking in your brain. You can look at a horse and instantaneously evaluate it in a very quick way. And I remember the exact moment that happened at our wonderful Arabian horse show in Scottsdale one year, where I was watching horses go in the end gate, and I could say long back, pretty face, nice neck, tight on tail. And, I thought, wow, I'm doing it. I'm doing what I always wanted to be able to do. And in the meantime, I had bred some horses, and even though the first filly I ever bred was, I knew from the beginning, not necessarily a great horse, I absolutely knew that this was what I wanted to do as my children were growing, consecutive with them growing, and they were always my priority and still are. But being able to be involved in the horse industry, the Arabian horse industry, and to be a breeder was my goal. And it has been a lifelong dream to be able to have.
Where did Daydream come from? I'm sure you've been asked that a million times, but
Well, it's really true. A friend of mine mentioned the name, and I immediately knew that was the right name because as a young girl in a community with sidewalks and lovely trees and nothing to do with horses, my parents would go on Sunday drives, and I would sit in the back seat and dream of horses. So my daydreams, it was like, that's the perfect name for me because that is what I did obsessively. And my belief is that I have a strong faith and that God puts a DNA chip in all of us to do something in the world that needs to be done.
Right.
And I believe I got Arabian horses, and how lucky I feel to have gotten that incredible gift to be able to have and I do believe I do have a gift. I think all great breeders do have a gift for breeding. It's an inherent.
there's a sixth sense there.
I agree.
There is. You know, horses that would fit into what your vision is. I think each of us have a specific vision, and where we can all agree that this is a great horse at a horse show or whatever, that there are steps to get there that each of us might take differently in order to achieve it.
Sure. And I think also we agree to disagree, because I think that everyone, what's so great too about this breed is that we all, and us as breeders, we all have our idea of what we like. For me, again, as a breeder, having my first experience with the horses that I saw and grew up with, growing up in Michigan, and Dr. James Rooker, and the horses that he was breeding and producing. I would go to the smaller shows. We had a little fairground called the Mason County Fairgrounds, and we would go there, my brother and I, and show, and quite often I spent the entire day watching the classes and really studying the horses, and just the unusualness of each horse, or uniqueness, I should say. And and of course today, as a breeder of purebred halter horses, I think that comes from my willingness as a kid to sit and look at the pedigrees and really love, again, the characteristics of the purebred halter horse. So we all sort of have our own.
I think you really have to saturate your mind like that and become that involved.
That's a good way of putting it.
I agree.
I was in the 7th grade, getting in trouble in the 7th grade because there was an Arabian Horse World magazine inside the book that I was supposed to be reading in class. And I would get in trouble. But when you were talking about learning, when you were talking about you saw horses coming in at the gate in Scottsdale, and you realized at that moment you could critique them. I showed dogs really competitively for about 6 years, and a woman who showed dogs for me in Ohio was the smartest animal person I had ever been around, and she taught me how to critique an animal, and it really moved me forward when I came back from dogs into horses. Like, I realized how much I had learned from her, but I learned on a dog.
Sure.
In a way,
Well, and I also did a lot of design classes and did interior design for a while, and I think scale and balance and harmony and all of those things are certainly part of building a horse. It's kind of like a architectural class, but in 3 dimensions.
It's pleasing to the eye. Harmony and balance is so pleasing to the eye. It's beautiful in its own way, like that.
It is, and I think also that horses are beautiful because they have amazing abilities to do things, and the bond people have with them it's hard to describe, as we all know, to people who are not in the horse industry. And I think we all have expressed that we feel kind of sorry that people don't have something in their life that they're as passionate about as we are about
Right.
horses. And it is such an exciting and wonderful world to be involved in, and the common thread of each of us having that real passion for these animals. And there is a joy that is hard to find somewhere else other than a family. And it really is a family, though, when you're
I
a
agree.
breeder.
Well, I think again is when I look back at my life now with Arabian horses, and I look back to, when I was that kid at the showgrounds looking and watching the classes and visiting farms. We had, at one time, Michigan was one of the #1 states for Arabian horse
Yeah.
ownership and breeders.
Yeah.
And so I had, there were many farms that I got to visit and really, again, study what was working and what wasn't working. Because I think that's the key too, is a lot of people don't study what didn't work.
That's true.
As a breeder. And I think that, nowhere back then did I think I would be traveling to Saudi Arabia and Dubai and Paris every year to attend the World Championships because of the Arabian horse and how it has touched and changed my life.
For
the
40
last-
years now, everything in my life is somehow connected. I mean, what I do for a living, I'm now for almost 20 years, came from some horse people, who said, come do this.
Right.
And my friendship with people in the horse business are some of the longest friendships, if not the longest friendships I have, and the deepest friendships
Right.
I have. And it's touching to me to think about that, and so humbling to
Right.
think that this gorgeous creature has blessed my life to the extent that it has.
Well, and sometimes, Jeff, I think it even goes beyond that. There's an interconnection with people all over the world in countries far-reaching to Europe, Middle East, and South America, where even through language barriers and incredible cultural differences, that there's this common bond of the Arabian horse, and it strikes me that with that bond, there's an incredible ability to join cultures and people that we just nobody gets that opportunity.
Right.
And I think it's the State Department should know what a great ambassador the Arabian horse
Right.
is for world peace, possibly. It's a great thing.
And I think that actually, if you really look at some of the shows, the Scottsdale show, here we are at the Breeders' World Cup. The people that come from all over the world, again, to be united with other horse breeders, Arabian horse breeders, that it's quite amazing.
And the passion that those people bring with them. Like, I remember in 1977, I think, Vija, a mare from Michał in Poland, had been leased by Lasma, and she was going to be shown here in the States. And my dad took me to Scottsdale, and I couldn't understand what there was a crowd of people all around this horse stall, and the stall was all covered up. And they were, 50 deep coming from that stall back, and they're whispering and all that. And it was Vija inside that stall, and they were dying to see her. I mean, just passion, pure flowing passion,
And what's sad for me is, first of all, I love hearing those stories. And unfortunately, I got into the Arabian industry when all of that was coming to an end.
Right.
And I wish that those days, again, we could reinvent that or bring it back in some way. Now, for you, Carol, the mare that you had, your first horse, did you breed her?
I did.
So she is the one who produced your first foal.
She is. And I was at a horse show in Southern California, and Mike Neal came in with a chestnut 2-year-old stallion named Monogram. And I fell in love with him, and that was the sire of my first baby. And I still have her to this day. She's
Oh, wow.
25 maybe. And she's been a wonderful producer for me, and that's one of the most special lines that there is. And I was taught early on to really, as you go to a horse show, look at the horses you really like and admire, see who their parents are, go to the breeding farms if you can, see the siblings and the mother and father, and find out as much as you can before you make a breeding decision. And
Sure.
I had to very, very carefully, I mean, just the situation of being an active mom, and it was a gradual process of building a horse breeding group of mares. But it was, I think, really helped me that it didn't come in an instantaneous way. It was really a stair-step kind of process. And that was very helpful because I really learned from one mare, if you analyze her correctly, not maybe a world champion by any means, but she could produce something very special, and then her daughter could take the next step and produce something very special. And that's exactly how I built
Sure.
my program. And when I look back and I think, you know, it's an amazing accomplishment, and all that one mare, and I'm so grateful to have been given her as a gift, because it's led me into this world.
That's wonderful. And I think for your breeding program too, you have accomplished something that we would all love to do, and that is breeding halter and performance horses.
To me, I can't make a distinction there. To me, a great halter horse should have the confirmation of an ability to be a great riding horse. And structurally, that's part of what breeding is to me. I guess that was my early teaching. It's still my vision.
Sure.
And I love seeing a performance horse go. It's an equal thrill as to having a halter horse. And
Right.
I've been very lucky to have been successful. We had at U.S. Nationals last year an English horse that was top 10, a hunter that was national champion, a Western horse that was top 10, and halter horses that were top 10. So
Boy, that's what it's all about.
Very
Yeah.
special and an amazing experience. And each discipline is just a joy. So I think the right idea with horses is when you breed them, you look at them and say, what can this horse do? Not, what did I breed it to do, but what can it do? What is its sweet spot?
Sure.
Where can it be excellent?
Right.
And, I think that's been the gratifying experience. And to find the kind of trainers that, you have a kind of hit and miss experience for a while, and then you find some great people, or maybe you were lucky to originally, and I was, to find great people to bring out the best in each horse. And so I think I love both the worlds, and I think that it is, this show to me is very special because of the breed. These are breeding animals.
Right.
And I can't imagine having respect for a performance person that didn't respect our breeding animals, and vice versa. Our people with these beautiful halter horses also have to respect the amazing ability and the trainability and the minds and the talents of the Arabian performance horse.
If you could sit on a long flight with a breeder next to you that you've never met, who would that be?
Well, I met him very briefly. I think one person that fascinates me and would be Dr. Jean LaCroix, because he created such a shift. I think in any industry, whether it's art or whatever, you have very talented people, and then all of a sudden Picasso comes. Why did that person change everything? And I think he's one of the people that really did change everything in our breed, really brought in an athleticism maybe we just hadn't achieved at that point. And so that would be a very fascinating experience to really talk to him about that vision more. And I think he really was a breeder.
Yeah.
Well, I know, Carol, in my yearly schedule of farm tours and traveling, I do visit your farm, I think, once a year.
Yes.
For people who have not been to
It's
Daydream,
not often enough, by the way. Oh.
I agree. I agree. For people who have not been to Daydream, how would you describe the horses that they would see if they did come to Daydream? The Arabian horses.
Well, it would be like someone describing their children. Of course, they're gifted, they're beautiful, they're amazing, top of the heap. I think you would see great beauty. I like to joke that if it can't move and doesn't have big eyes, it just can't live here. So those are two really important things for me. I think that there's...
But I think that those are important things because I know myself as a breeder. I also say, and you've been to my farm many times, and
I love
it's
it.
quite obvious that gray
Yes.
is my favorite color. And I often, when I speak with people, when they do come to the farm, we talk, and I say tail carriage is absolutely, and movement is so important to me as a breeder, and a beautiful face. So I think it is important that you say exactly what you just said.
I think, and yet I think there's not a part of a horse that I can ignore in order to just have another thing. And I think maybe a complete horse would be, what I'm striving for. I really want all of it. And I believe if it's not really hard, then what fun is that? I mean,
Right.
it's only fun if it's challenging to a very high degree. And I think that great breeding programs, that's always the goal.
Sure.
It's your goal,
I agree.
it's my goal, and it's like the state of Poland's goal that has been doing this for hundreds of years, to keep layering. And I like to say it's layering what you love. Continue to keep layering attributes on that are going to, you may never achieve it in your lifetime, or anyone may never achieve it in their lifetime, but to continue to layer generation after generation these
Sure.
qualities that become so consistent that you can count on them to take the next step forward.
Do you know, just on that note, Director Yavorowski at Mihov, the layering that went into producing those eucalyptus daughters that we all watched and loved.
Right.
He started with Amareth Sahib, then Nabor, then Palace, no, Tsaritsyn, then Palace, then Eucalyptus, like just beautiful, just sands.
Right.
Like,
And it really is like a geology.
yeah,
because
it is like geology. Yeah.
One of the tragedies, I think, is that for breeding programs, I mean, my children are not horse enthusiasts, and you work a lifetime, and then it's kind of can get quickly lost or dispersed. And I wish there was a way to gift a program to someone better.
Right.
The Polish people are lucky to have their state studs because they continue on, and one director will bring one influence and one set of ideals, but the next one will add his, but it will have been taught through the generations and all their stud books and the history. So I mean, I think that's one of the great things about going to Poland, is seeing that consistent ability to be able to hand it off,
Sure.
and yet continue to.
Yep.
But the
Try to do
resilience
that.
of the breed, what's really amazing is long after we are gone, the three of us are gone, the breed is here. The breed survives. The breed survives breeding programs dying and going away. It survives everything. And it's amazing that when you think it's here for others to enjoy long after we're gone. And Nat Gorham, who owned Arabian Horse World, told me that one day.
I think we're all just a beautiful link on a chain that goes through history and through millennium now with these horses. We just make our little contribution, and that is going to be linked
Yes.
on to the next
Yes.
one, and linked on to the next one, and I think all people like to think they have left something behind, and certainly with your children you do, but also in the horse business you are leaving legacies behind, because 100 years from now people will look at pedigrees and they'll see my stallions or your horses and
Right.
stallions and mares, and that will be a contribution. Maybe they won't know your name, but they'll know the horses'
Sure.
names. and that will be a gift that you've given the future.
Well, I mean, just like we're doing here, how wonderful that will be 30, 40 years from now for people to sit here and talk about the horses that we have contributed to the Arabian horse industry. So, well, thank you so much for sharing your stories with us. We enjoy it.
Yeah, thank you, Carol.
It was wonderful.
Really nice.
Well, these are two special people. I always love talking horses with them, for sure.
Thank you.